There's lots of talk online and information about attachment theory, but we thought it might be useful to explain that from a professional standpoint and also how that may apply to your personal life. So Alex, can you tell us in real life terms what actually is attachment theory?
Well, I guess the attachment styles as we know them were kind of born in the 1970s from a piece of research just looking at how infants and their caregivers interact, and that is the strange situation experiment. A researcher observed parents and their children in kind of a clinical-ish room, and the researcher was in the room, and the parent then left the room and re-entered, and they just tried to kind of observe what the infants behaved like, if there was any differences. And that's where those 3 attachment styles that you'll see all over social media have come from. So firstly, your secure attachment. This is an infant that was distressed when mum left, quite easily soothed when mum returned, and then once mum was back in the room was kind of independently playing, interacting with the researcher, normal baby stuff. The second attachment style that came out of that research was the anxious attachment. So this is an infant that was really distressed when mum left and then really struggled to be soothed by mum when she returned, and wouldn't go off and kind of play independently, was really clinging to mum when she returned. And the third attachment style kind of born out of that research was the avoidant attachment. So this is a baby that wasn't particularly bothered when mum left the room, wasn't particularly bothered when she returned. There was kind of no obvious response, and kind of interacted with mum in the same way that they did with the researcher. So there was kind of nothing particularly bonded that was observed. Later, there was another attachment style, the disorganised attachment, added, which is an infant, a young person who desperately wants to be close with parents and wants to reject them at the same time.
So that's a hybrid, effectively, of the anxious and the avoidant. Okay, so you've explained about how and where this comes from early life, but how does this actually relate then into adult life? How does it show up in our adult selves?
So those early experiences are where we learn what we know about relationships, if they're safe, if they're overwhelming, if they're unpredictable. And that's what we carry with us through our whole lives and all of our relationships.
So we've looked at where this comes from in babies and then how it translates into adult life. For the rest of this video, we're just going to focus on anxious and avoidant attachment styles. Often these two get attracted together, but why is that, Alex? Why do these two kind of meet and find each other?
So I guess you've got to remember that people with anxious attachment styles perhaps grew up feeling like love was inconsistent, like warmth from caregivers was perhaps there one day and not there the next, and that might have been because their caregivers were preoccupied or working hard or just not very attuned to their children's needs. That could also look like someone with an anxious attachment style having learned that they had to earn affection or attention, kind of if they've done well at school or in their extracurricular activities. So that kind of hypervigilance or hyper-awareness of what's happening in the environment around them and sensitivity to disconnection is a really well-practiced thought process for those with anxious attachment styles. And those that grew up with avoidant attachment styles often learnt that it wasn't safe to express what they needed, or that wouldn't be listened to, their vulnerability wouldn't be held. And because of that, they often rely on independence and that kind of like, I can do it myself attitude. Because of these really well-practiced views of relationships, anxious and avoidantly attached people are just drawn to each other. The anxious person picks up on that distance, on that unavailability sometimes, and reenacts the seeking reassurance cycle. And the avoidant person feels that closeness, feels that pursuit almost, and withdraws. What's really important to remember is that familiarity doesn't mean connection, and quite often chemistry and the familiarity are mixed up.
So what's important to point out here is these two attachment styles, they feed each other's fear cycles. So as the avoidant retreats, the anxious person, they pursue out of fear. And when that happens, the avoidant person then becomes overwhelmed and further retreats, thus completing the cycle. Both people's fear being activated in that moment.
This cycle is really commonly mistaken for passion and connection, and actually it's not love thriving, it's two people's nervous systems feeding off one another. What's really important to notice here is that both people are seeking safety. The anxious person is seeking connection and the avoidant person is trying to remove themselves from threat.
So how do we actually create change and how do we understand that? Well, I think it's really important to point out that a secure attachment style can be achieved, but with one caveat. It's really important to understand our needs within this and where it comes from. So these are the components of the cycle.
So depending on whether you fit that more pursuer or retreat in this cycle, how might you discover what you need?
I think that's a really good question. Often the anxious attachment style, they're looking for reassurance in that moment. It's these two kind of attachment styles. It's about a lifetime's worth of experiences that has built up these core fears. So the anxiously attached person, the pursuer, they're looking for something, and often they want some reassurance. They want to know that things are okay, or that the person who is leaving the retreater is going to come back within a certain time frame. So often for the anxiously attached, asking, are we okay? Can I have some reassurance that we're all right in this disagreement and we're going to come back and talk to this? It soothes them. It creates a calming effect. Alternatively, for the avoidant attachment style, they're looking for that space. They want to be able to remove themselves from the threat, from that danger, and to be able to go and have that time to reflect and to be able to come back. For that person to be able to ask for that space and communicate that allows then the anxious person to understand what's going on. So we've got this dance that's going on between the two. We've got the anxious and the pursuer, and then the avoidant and the retriever.
And I think what's also really important to notice in this cycle is both people play a part, and both people need to learn how to soothe themselves in it. The anxiously attached person might feel like nothing will soothe them apart from the reassurance from their partner, but there is a role to practice down-regulation yourself. Do things that you enjoy. Maybe that's really angrily cleaning the house or going for a walk around the park. You know, there's lots of different things that people use to try and bring themselves down. But the point of taking that space, the avoidant person saying, I need some space, I'm coming back, and the anxious person allowing that to happen, is knowing that there's going to be a more productive conversation at the end of it. And that requires a different headspace.
And I think building on this, when you have that space, it's really important to kind of note that this is about coming back to a place where you're going to have a better conversation. So in that space, you go and work on yourself, you practice self-soothing, and that will look different for everyone, whether that's going and doing a hobby or going for a walk or cleaning, whatever you kind of need to do within that period of space, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever you've both set that's appropriate. But I think the most important thing here is that this is a joint effort, and this is about coming back together at a time that's more suitable, recognising the cycle that you've both become dysregulated, that you're both having old triggers, old fears kind of being reignited, and to be able to go and seek that space, soothe, and come back in a better headspace.
The more this new way of communicating is practiced, the easier it becomes, the shorter the space needed is, and the better the conversations are.
So how does this look like in an actual relationship? Well, I want to give an example from our relationship. So previously, when Alex would move in really quickly to want to talk to me about something, I could at times feel quite cornered, and I'd want to retreat from that situation. Then I'd feel like it was a danger, and I'd want to go and have time to think about what was going on for me.
And when Mark used to go quiet, my brain told me that there was something wrong, and I moved so quickly to try and fix it. Over time, we've learnt to name the cycle rather than blaming each other, move into much healthier communication.
We've learnt together to build on this over time, because these were really well ingrained patterns, things that we'd learnt from our early childhood and throughout our life of how to deal with situations. It's only through being able to have honest conversations like this and putting the work in to understand it that we've then been able to move to a place of better communication.
And I think that's the thing to highlight, isn't it? That these ways of communicating are safety strategies that have been practiced over a lifetime. They're not going to change immediately, but noticing what that cycle is the first step.
Neither of these two styles, neither of them are wrong. I think that's really important to point out here. This is learnt behaviour, as Alex has just said. So it's going to take time. Ideally, we want to be able to move towards that secure attachment style, but we've got to own our own stuff within that as well. So if you've made it this far through the video, which one do you fit? Are you the pursuer or do you retreat? And what about your partner?
If you found this video helpful, please like,
comment,
and subscribe.
and we'll see you again on the next video.